Hello and welcome back to the Dugout podcast. I'm your host, Alexander Cruikshanks, and this is in the series of videos that we've been doing to preview every SPFL club season. Today we are previewing Rangers, and we've got a very special guest on today, the host of Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. We have David Edgar on today. David, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, Alex. Thanks very much for asking me on.
Yeah, no problem. I just felt like you're probably the guy to come and speak to about everything. Just so
Don't know about that, but thank you.
yeah, but a lot's been happening at the club over
Mm.
the past few months. There's been a lot of change, and there is certainly a lot to talk about. Especially, I'd say there's a lot of transfer business to talk about. But first of all, you've covered it already in your own sort of platforms, but
Mm.
I just want to get your take on the new manager, Russell Martin.
Yeah, look, I think like a lot of Rangers fans, I'd be lying if I said he was my first choice, because he wasn't. And a lot of that was going on Southampton last season. You know, that was the most visible thing. And you don't follow things closely if it's not your club, quite so much. So initially, I think I was a bit, "Well, I don't get it." But the more I heard about it, the more I thought, okay, I can see the logic in it. Now, that's not a guarantee that it's going to work, obviously. But like with any manager, once they arrive, you need to get behind them. I'm sure there'll be other people from other clubs actually this summer who are on your previous shows will say the same. My friend's a Kelly fan. I don't think he was too enamoured. Dundee fans, certainly online at least, don't seem to be too enamoured of the manager. I even saw some Hearts fans that weren't happy, and you would think that had been a very straightforward, sensible appointment. So I think what Rangers need, what we have lacked the last few years, is a definable style,
Yeah,
a way of playing. I think that Rangers have been very off the cuff. In everything that we've done on and off the field, it's all just been about chucking enough stuff at the wall and hoping something sticks. And I think that it was really brought home to me when one of the listeners to Heart and Hand said to me, coming out of a game last season, met him and we're chatting away, and he said, "David, what's this Rangers team's style? Describe it to me." And I thought, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can say we do this or we're a team who likes this or whatever. I mean, basically, I could say, well, we usually line up in a sort of 4-2-3-1, and then it's a case of, I don't know. And I think that that's something that the new owners and Kevin Thelwell, the new director of football, want to address. They want Rangers to have a signature style. Now, I think there can be issues with that if it comes to the point of total inflexibility.
yeah,
This is how we play and we will not change. And that was a criticism levelled at Russell Martin. But I think that overall, having a way of saying, right, this is what we want to do. And within these parameters, things can change and we can tweak, tactically or systems or players or whatever. But overall, we want to do this. And I can understand that because, in modern football, people, they want to be entertained as well as win. I mean, the key thing at any club is, of course, to win. I'm not naive, but I think sometimes watching Rangers, certainly last season, was a bit of a chore.
yeah,
And there were other times that they could be brilliant, but you never knew what you were getting. And if you've got ambitions to win things, you can't have that. You can't be turning up and saying, "Is this a good day or a bad day?" And knowing within 5 minutes really of the match kicking off what you were going to get. So no, I'm interested to see how his ideas work. I'm interested to see what sort of style we play, what sort of team he puts together, and fingers crossed from a Rangers point of view, certainly that we see serious improvement because as I say, last season was grim in all sorts of ways.
yeah, definitely it was. And just you talking about um, saying there, so a listener saying to you, can you tell me what Rangers style is? That's I just thought about it there, and I thought I couldn't tell
No,
either. A lot of
no.
the time we were just relying, and I can pick
Hope.
out a couple of players
Aye, hope so,
individually.
hope one of the good players does something.
Yeah,
Absolutely, and that isn't. You can't go on that. You can't survive on that because hopefully Egaman would have done something, or Hadji or Cherny quite often was one. But if those players weren't maybe quite on their day, then you didn't really have a lot. And it did seem to be very much just a case of, and whenever you asked Philippe Clement, he would talk vaguely. He would say, well, we're a team that likes to dominate the ball and play attacking foot. And I'm like, well, yeah, these are ideas, though. These are not things that we're seeing on the field. So I think that when the change, came, I can get why they wanted that type of manager. And let's be honest, in football, in modern football, full stop, it's become almost a very um, uh, most clubs, I think, are looking for managers who bring that rather than maybe old school, more general styles of manager who come in and are very pragmatic. I always think there's a balance. I don't think that being pragmatic to the point where you're changing everything every week is a particularly good look. And I don't think being a zealot who doesn't change anything ever, regardless of how things are going, works either. I think there is a lot of room in the middle to meet with those two places, and that's what I'm kind of hoping to see this season.
Yeah, I'd totally agree with that. I think that was maybe one of my concerns initially after his Martin's appointment was about that about all that talk that you mentioned about he doesn't change his style. But one thing I did say that now that he's in the door, the supporters all they can really do is just get behind him and give him a little bit of time as well, and because I think with Rangers, there's so many things, so many elements that go into a manager being successful. But what I think needs to happen as well, that the supporters need to realise that this is well and truly the beginning of a rebuild.
Mm.
Obviously, we do want to see improvements on the pitch, but I just hope that it doesn't get to maybe October or November and we've maybe lost once or twice or whatever, and they turn so quickly because we have seen it before. And
Mm.
although it's not been good enough the past few years, but I just feel like sometimes, especially you see it, it's weird. The people I talk to in person seem very level-headed, but it's all the people online, that after one
Yeah,
bad result, they're
yeah.
calling for the manager's head.
I think that there is, definitely a difference between real life and online, and just in general. I think that that's pretty clear to most people. And I think that the way that social media is it sort of encourages you to take a position that isn't nuanced. You're either all for something or dead set against it.
Yeah.
And and that's the nature of it. It's short bursts of text. That's the whole point. Short, quick messaging. And I think that in terms of a little bit of, as I see nuance of saying, well, like here are the good points, here are the bad points. Let's discuss this. I don't think it's the ideal forum for that, but it does create noise, and you can't uninvent it. It's there, so you're going to have to live with that. And I think that the Rangers will be interesting to see how they deal with that because the previous board certainly I think were reactive to fan sentiment. I think that was a big consequence of what happened after the Sydney friendly was mooted and the Rangers fans just to a man were like, we do not want this. And after that, I think the board were very reactive. And I think, if anyone wants an example of that, it's the fact that Frank Lampard, was all set for the job, and there was a real negative reaction against that. And then he was no longer in the run, and it was Philippe Clement. So what I think, and again, we don't know this yet because they're only just in the door, but, speaking to Leeds United fans and even speaking actually to some people in the US who follow the 49ers, one of the things they've said is they will do what they think is right. They don't get swayed. That's not something that's going to happen. They're not going to be on forums or Twitter, X, sorry, and, saying, or the fans are saying this, we've got to do that. They're going to say, no, this is our plan and this is what we're going to do. Now, there are limits to that. The fans do have powers. If fans stop turning up, that always changes things. If fans are loudly protesting, it can have an effect on things. But I think that they're going to stick to what they believe works. Obviously, it would be ideal if it just worked straight out the back. And I think you're right in terms of patience, but the difficulty is that Rangers fans have been patient. We've had so many years of underperformance that it's difficult. And when you're at the start of something, it seems quite a long way away to get to the destination of where you want to go. So I think any manager, I don't think this is in any way, revelatory or particularly insightful on my part. So I apologise for that in advance. But I think all managers need to get off to a decent start these days, don't they? Because I
Yeah,
mean, I read somewhere the average tenure for a manager in the English Championship is 8 months. I mean, that's
yeah,
you know, to someone my age, that's ridiculous, right? It's just, but that is how football is these days. So, Russell Martin, to say that he needs to get off to a good start, it's true, it's obvious, but it is true, but it's not unique to Rangers.
yeah, definitely. I just want to sort of pivot away from Martin for a little bit and talk about the transfer window. Rangers have already brought in two players, obviously Lyle Cameron on the pre-contract and Max Aarons on loan from Bournemouth. Look, to me, looking at those signings, I think they are decent, but there has
Mm.
still been a lot of rumours circulating. Um, Today, I saw the re-emergence of the Jamie Vardy talks. I've seen obviously Connor Cody's return to pre-season training, but reports are also saying that he's still in advanced talks with Rangers. And I saw Samuel Bally. Rangers were
Mm.
interested in him. I think he's a Como player. He was on loan at Zurich last season in Switzerland,
Great
and
name as well, eh? Sam Bally.
yeah.
Wonderful.
And I saw the other day that they were also linked to 22-year-old Brazilian midfielder Matinho, who was on loan at Basel. They want him back, but apparently Rangers are going to try and beat them to the signature of him. Just in the terms of these rumours and the sort of business, it seems like it's a combination of experience and youth
Mm.
that they're going for. Do you think that's the right way to go?
Yeah, Rangers lack leadership on the field. I don't know a single Rangers fan who doesn't feel that. And leadership's one of these, things that are hard to quantify, but you know it when you see it. And you know it when you don't see it, or you notice the lack of it, the absence of it. And Rangers have looked like that over certainly the last season. We lost a lot of the senior players. And even at that, the senior players hadn't been good enough to deliver the amount of trophies that we'd hoped for. So I think, clearly Rangers, if you look at, you're right there. You mentioned Cody, Joe Rothwell's another one has been mentioned, and Vardy. I don't know how much stall there is in that, but these are guys who are not only coming because of their football skills, but they're coming because the manager says, "Look, I need guys on the field. I need lieutenants. I need guys in the dressing room who are a strong presence." And Rangers lost, I would say, probably the most influential player who was Leon Balogun last season. He's no longer there. So Rangers do need that. They need people who drive standards, and they need people who've got that leadership quality. Because there were times last season when it got tough and Rangers looked lost, and there's always going to be moments in every game where every team it's going to be difficult, and that's when you need the guys who are like, right, come on, and have that presence. It's not just a case of clapping your hands and saying, let's work harder. You need the guys that can instill that belief in their teammates that, look, we're going to be all right. So I can see that. The other side of that, and you're spot on when you brought this up, is that there's also younger players being targeted because we still do have to have a working transfer model. And the ideal situation, of course, for Rangers is that every summer you make one big sale that, then funds the majority of the other things that you need to do. So Rangers transfer model under Ross Wilson had, I think, well, John Bennett described it as a myth. So, that's coming from someone who was the chairman. He's telling us that. And I think that Rangers began it again last season and probably going to bear the fruit of that almost immediately with Hamza Egerman. You've got to keep doing that. You've got to be out there and scouting. You've got to be out there and finding players. And interestingly, Leeds United, as I say, I spoke to a Rangers and Leeds fan, as he put it himself, Rangers fan by birth, Leeds fan by geography. And he's lived in Yorkshire for years. So he comes and sees Rangers, but he'll go and see Leeds as well, season ticket holder at both grounds. And he said, they don't just go out and buy players for English money, 15, 20 million quid. He said there's a lot of £4 or £5 million players brought into Leeds who've been very successful. So they scout, and we need that. We need that. We've got to be finding bargains. There are bargains out there, but you need to be finding them. I think that sometimes in Scottish football there is this difficulty perhaps in the gap financially that exists between us and the rest of the world. That, if Rangers are in for players about the £4 or £5 million mark, that's a lot to us.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money to us. Bajrami last year, 3.5 million, that's a lot to us. But in football terms now, it's nothing. Absolutely nothing. And the gap that can appear between that. Last season, Rangers were excellent in Europe, never really outclassed except once, and that was against Lyon. And that's the difference. Someone like Ryan Cherky, who's just gone to City for 60 million, that's the difference between a £60 million player and a £5 million player.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of that, though, is that there should be a difference between a £5 million player and a guy who's moving about on free transfers, and that wasn't visible in the league for Rangers. When we played the sides that we did have the financial advantage against, so that needs to improve. But I think that overall, the everything that's coming out from Kavanagh 49ers is sensible, sustainable, not throwing money at the problem and hoping that it goes away. We're going to make sure that we make the right decisions. So that might mean that you bring in, someone like Aaron's, I think, is an excellent example of that. He's here, for a year because he's a player that, we probably would need to spend 7-8 million on, and Rangers don't want to do that right now. So you get him, he comes in, he fills a position for you, and that allows you to put your resources somewhere else. And then hopefully when the team's more settled next summer, you then can go and make a permanent signing in there. So things like that. But I don't think that we're going to move for too many sexy signings. I'm not sure how possible that is in our price range anyway. To get somebody to go, oh, I watched a lot of him last season, because very few of us sit and watch, like the Belgian league or the Scandinavian leagues. So it's not really going to be guys that instantly make you very excited. But it's when they arrive, are they good? Do they fit? That's also a thing I think Rangers have a problem with in the last couple of seasons. Rangers have signed players because we've looked at him and he's a good player, right? And he can do this and that. But they've just brought him in and basically went with the idea of, if we sign enough good players, then the team will be good. And I don't think that works in modern football. It's like, well, he might be a good player, but does he fit?
Yeah.
And to give you an example, last season Rangers had Tom Lawrence, Yanis Hadji, and Nedum Bajrami, 3 players for one position in the side, but taking up an awful lot of wages and fees. That's not that's a situation that comes when you're not building a squad sensibly. That comes when you're just signing players and hoping that it works out. So things like that, I hope to see the end of in the future.
Yeah, and we've been linked. Rangers have been linked to quite a few sort of English players as well, and I think that also speaks to an element of building a squad in terms of sort of cohesion. Because Rangers, they did win 3-0, but it was against Celtic at Ibrox. And they fielded a team starting 11 with 11 different nationalities, which when you think, about sort of building chemistry and communication and all those kind of football fans, I don't think take that into account a lot of the time, because they're used to going on Football Manager and signing
yeah,
and it works, or they're playing FIFA or whatever. But these are real guys who are moving maybe from different countries, and it can be difficult coming into that sort of environment. And I think, you need people who are maybe of the same nationality, or they can speak your language or whatever, to help you feel better, and then you can grow as a group.
Yeah, I think you need a mix. I mean, don't get me wrong. If Rangers had, 11 brilliant players who knitted together brilliantly from 11 different countries, I couldn't care less. I do not care about a player's, background or whatever. Yeah. But I think there is some merit in having a Scottish, British core to your side. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Just people who are aware of, the situation at the club and maybe don't have to go through the learning process that new players coming in from abroad culturally will need to do. That's just common sense. Someone who has maybe played here before, someone who understands the unique challenge there's a unique challenge at every club, by the way. That's one of the things that annoys me. I hear people say, "Oh, it's exceptionalism to say that all clubs are different." That's the joy of them. That's why we all follow a different club. But coming in and understanding the expectations at Rangers are enormous. You'll be expected to win every game. Doesn't matter who you're up against. You'll still be expected to win it, regardless of how good the opposition are. And the fact as well, I think that where it's different from for Rangers and, to be fair, Celtic, to me even, but clubs in England, is that up here we're the news. 24/7 Rangers will be in the news. That will happen all day, every day. It's the focus, front page and back page. On the evening news every single night. Now down south, I think that only really happens at Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, those kind of clubs. And I think you can be playing away for a side like Brentford or Brighton, and you'll get a little bit more time to develop and fit in and learn the ropes. That is not going to happen up here. You'll be put in the side, and 50,000 people will be sitting in judgment of you straight away. But that isn't going to change. So you either can handle that or you can't. And if you can't, you probably won't thrive at Rangers. So it takes a certain mentality. It takes, obviously, skill. I mean, clearly, you've got to be a good player before you do anything else. But it does take a certain type of player. And some people will under it, but some people absolutely revel in it. And those are the guys that I think can lead you on to success. And obviously, once you establish, I think, a certain stability, it's a lot easier to integrate players. Rangers are kind of starting almost from scratch on that because it hasn't been there in the past. Now Rangers need to, a key word again that I keep coming back to is stability. We've got to make things that everything is not always in this constant state of flux, that there are some calm days there where, people can fit into the side. So that's certainly the hope this summer. And it won't be done in one window, but hopefully make a very good start on it.
Yeah, yeah. And we've kind of touched on sort of the incomings, but you mentioned one of the potential outgoings there. Hamza Agaman, it's being reported that a fee and a deal has been agreed for him to go to Lille to replace Jonathan David, who's left there, who's been lighting it up in France for a few years. So big shoes for him to fill if it does go through. But what do you make of that move in terms of, because I think I'm kind of I'm a little bit torn, because I think it for the fee that's being reported, I think it was around 15 million. I think that's a really good bit of business for a player that we only got a year ago for buttons, basically. But however, I'm a little bit torn. I would have maybe have liked to have seen him for another year, but also if a club's offering that money, you've got to take it.
Yeah, I think that this is a bit of a no-lose situation, really, because if he stays, we've got a very good player, and if he goes, hopefully we'll get a very good fee and be able to buy maybe two players who can come in and improve the squad. So those are, that's a much better situation to be in than recently, where it's been, can we get someone to take this player off our hands?
Yeah.
Do we need to blindfold them and get them drunk and get them to sign when they're not looking? So I would miss him, because I enjoyed watching him in a team that there weren't very many players who, to use the old cliche, could get you off your seat. He can do some very special things with the ball. But in sheer business terms, and Rangers have been bad at this, then yeah, you need to look at that and go, look at the money we paid, look at what we're getting now. I just don't think at this point we're in a position to gamble and say, no, we'll keep him another year. Now, hopefully in a year or two we're a bit more successful, a lot more settled, hopefully, then you might be going, actually no, we can hold him for a year. But when you are just trying to get the model, and when you've so many needs across the rest of the side, then I think you need to seriously look at that. So, I would certainly miss him. But again, more proof, guys like this are out there if you're looking hard enough. And that's what Rangers need to keep doing.
Yeah, definitely. I just there's been another couple of obviously exit rumours as well. Saw today actually that apparently Besiktas are looking at Mohamed Diamande around 8.5 to 10.3 million pounds. I think this one I'd be more leaning on the side of keeping him, because if I'm getting my facts correct, Rangers paid around £4 million for him.
Yes, that's right.
And it would be obviously it would be a profit, but for the fee that's been reported, this would probably one that I would rather keep for another year, because I think if you try, like obviously with this kind of model that we want to try and undertake, and buy cheap, sell for a profit when you can, which as you mentioned Rangers haven't been doing, and we lost, Rangers lost Kent on a free and Morelos
Yeah.
on a free and all that. However, I don't think this. I think two elements. I don't think this bid that's been reported would be quite enough, and also you don't want to sell too many of your sort of integral players before a new season starts when you're trying to start again.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I think that firstly, I think that I listen again. Doubling your money on someone who hasn't been quite consistent yet. That's fair to say. I think anyway. I think he's been good, particularly in Europe and actually in Old Firm matches. I think he stood out, but in certain other, a lot of the kind of more run of the mill, with no disrespect, man, but less exciting games to play, and he hasn't featured as strongly as a player with his ability should. Against that, he's exactly, I would have thought, the type of player Russell Martin would want, i.e., he's good on the half turn. So Diamandi can take the ball facing his own goal and comfortably receive it and turn and go with it, as opposed to, some players are very uncomfortable doing that.
Aye.
So I could see him being someone that he really liked. Against that, though, you need to go, it's again, right, if say you get, and I'm just using the fee just as a round number, say you can get 10 million for him, and you say, right, he's a good player, and we might be, but right now, would we be better off with these two targets we have at 5 million each than for him? And that's the kind of decision you have to make. And Rangers have made so many wrong ones the last few seasons. That's been the issue. That again, we are kind of starting from scratch a little bit on that. So I think that timing's everything. Decisions that will be taken this summer might not necessarily be the decisions that would be taken next summer if Rangers have done a bit better or whatever, or the team's improved. So I think that each bid would be taken in as it comes. Personally, I think with Diamandi, there should be more to come. Like if he stayed, I would expect more consistency from him because the ability's there and he's shown that. But we need to see it game in, game out, and that's something we haven't seen. I think that he's definitely someone who could improve under that manager. But if Rangers can bring in a couple of quality players for the money for him, if he's not going to play every week, that's something that we don't know at this point. Then I think you need to look at it and potentially take it.
Yeah. Just one more sort of exit kind of rumor that we've been going on for a bit before I sort of take it into your take on the season coming up and we wrap it up is Cyril Dessers. Obviously, it's been going on for weeks now. It was confirmed and then it wasn't confirmed, and then Rangers were wanting more, and apparently he's had a contract agreed for ages. I don't know where the deal stands right now, but I think the potential's still there that he could leave to go to AEK Athens. And despite sort of, I'd say my own personal love-hate relationship with him over the past 2 years, he's one that I wouldn't have wanted to go this summer.
Has there ever been a player that polarised opinions quite as much as Cyril Dessers? And we actually got towards the end of the season on our shows saying, I don't know what else to say. We've said it all from praise to criticism and everywhere in between. Um, I think that the goal numbers are impressive. You cannot deny that. Some of his finishing is incredible, and some of his finishing is abysmal. And that's just who he is. He's a wonderful temperament for a footballer because he never gets too up and he never gets too down. He just keeps going along. In fact, I think we could all in life learn from Cyril Dessers with regards to that. But for me, given his age, he's now the wrong side of 30, given he's got 2 years in his deal, if you can get that money in for him and essentially get back what you paid for him, I think you've got to take it. I think as well that Rangers in Martin's system need a number 9 who has different types of qualities to what he has. Somebody whose link up plays better, somebody who can hold the ball up and bring others in from midfield a bit better than he does. So me personally, I would sell him. And there isn't a shortage of interest in him. If it's not Greece, there's interest in Turkey. There's interest in Italy, where he played previously. There's interest in Holland, although financially, I think those clubs would struggle to because there's a big gap between the top three and everyone else in Holland. So I think that they would maybe struggle to match his wages. But I would be surprised if he's still here come the end of the window.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just finally, I'd say, and I realise again, I've said it a couple of times, this is still very early. I would like a quick prediction on whether, okay, we'll go for league position, how the Rangers do in the two cups, and whether Rangers will be playing in Champions League or Europa League.
I think Champions League might come a wee bit too early for us, to get through the number of rounds that we would need to get through. I think that that's a big ask at the best of times.
Yeah.
And I think with a side that will be in the state of flux that it is, it might come a bit early for us, in all honesty. Everything else, I think we'll win. Not not really based on anything other than blind loyalty as a fan. But
Yeah.
what's the point if you're not getting into a season dreaming? Then what's the point?
Totally.
Realistic. Exactly. I mean, as I say, my mate, the Kelly fan, he thinks they're going to win the league this year, and as he said, I only need to be right once. But yeah, I look. We are very well aware of, I think, how far we've got to travel to get back to the summit. And I think that what we need to see is distinct improvement. And I think most Rangers fans would be understanding if we're sitting here next summer and Rangers had run the eventual winners very quick, very close, sorry, in the league, right up to the end. I think that we would understand that. But, cups, absolutely. Rangers, any domestic cup we enter, we should be looking to win. There's no reason why not. You need to win, 4-5 games in each competition. That should not be impossible. So I think certainly, Russell Martin needs to win a trophy this year. I don't, and probably if it's cups, both of them. In the league, we have a lot of points to make up, maybe too many to make up in 1 year, but we've got to be taking a significant chunk out of that at worst. At very worst, we've got to be getting a hell of a lot closer than we have been. Success at Rangers is the league title, and then anything else following from that is great, but that's the priority. So it's difficult. At best, if you don't win the league, you can be a qualified success at Rangers, at best. So I'm certainly looking to make sure that we are far closer in the league at worst, with a realistic chance of winning it come the end of the season. And yeah, I would expect us to win a cup or two. But I just think if there is one, slight concern I have, it's that, and I think all of those are achievable aims. I think the Champions League might just be a wee bit too much this year. And again, if it is, then you'd expect next year to have learned and to improve on that. That needs to be a thing at Rangers. This is what we haven't had. You need to improve year on year, especially when you're miles off where you want to be. You need to improve year on year. Rangers haven't done that. So every year we're starting miles back. We need to improve sustainably, to use that word again, and then make sure there's a platform next season to build on to get better again, and then the following season the same.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, David, for coming on today. I've really enjoyed it.
A pleasure. Thank you for asking me, and best of luck with everything on the show this season.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you to everyone who has watched and listened to today's episode. If you've heard of us, I'm sure you've heard of the Heart and Hand podcast. But if you haven't, go and check them out. Go check out our Twitter at the Dugout 2024 and go check out the TikTok. Thank you and goodbye.